Week 1 running back ranks, we have got you covered. We're going to walk you through every single relevant running back, walking through the tiers as we go. I'm joined by the fantastic Tom Strachan of the Fantasy Sanctuary and Fantasy Pros. Tom, we're going to start at the top with the superstars. Jamal Gibbs, Bijan Robinson, Christian McCaffrey and Ashton Jeanty. One player we've disagreed on this week, Christian McCaffrey. I've got him up as running back 1 overall. You are down lowly at running back 5. Why are you hating on Christian McCaffrey?
Yeah, I mean, this has been a common theme throughout the rankings videos that we've done for week 1. And I think that the Seahawks defense isn't getting enough respect. I think that the Niners are getting a little too much respect, perhaps. And I fully agree that McCaffrey, when healthy, should be absolutely given the biggest projections, and that's why like a lot of the industry experts at projections are projecting him to be clearly the RB1. And I get that. I know that I'm going to be out on an island on my own on this, but I've got him at RB5. I'm not saying people shouldn't start him. I just think that the Seahawks, they turned a corner in week 8. Before that, there were 5 different running backs who hit 95 rushing yards against them. After that, no running back hit that mark. They only gave up 2 running back receiving touchdowns all year, which is another area where we'd expect McCaffrey to be good in. And I think that it wouldn't be surprising if this was finally the year that the Niners said, okay, maybe we can't just give everything to Christian McCaffrey like we have done in the past. We need him to stay healthy, because the alternative, like last year, where they lost him and they just started running out of juice. Now, it wasn't purely down to McCaffrey, but Jordan Mason started running out of juice, wasn't fantastic down the stretch. They just weren't good enough to be able to compete. Now, trading for Brian Robinson, yes, they gave up peanuts, but Brian Robinson is a better backup running back than anybody else they had there. And it wouldn't surprise me to see him just get enough touches that it just eats into the volume slightly, and just enough where, yeah, for me, I would have this as a tier of 5, but he would be my RB5.
Yeah, for me, you look at the over-unders, 16.5 rush attempts, 4.5 receptions. If you're giving me 20 Christian McCaffrey touches, I'm starting him RB1 every single week. The other guy, I guess, that's probably noteworthy that we've got up in this superstar tier, Ashton Jeanty, obviously rookie, highly touted, 95th plus percentile prospect in my rookie model. Are you comfortable calling him a superstar from week 1, or are you a little bit nervous about what this Chip Kelly offense could have in store for us?
It's not. Any kind of nerves come from the opponent in New England, because it feels like Mike Vrabel is going to want to shut down the run. Now, New England's defense, they're stronger on the interior line than they are on the edge. So it's going to be, how do they get the ball to Jeanty, and how do they move him around? Do they try to run him up the gut? Because if so, maybe it's not going to work. But I think that this is a truly special player who the Raiders had no qualms about taking highly. We saw the Raiders, yes, different sort of management, all that sort of stuff. But last year, they took Brock Bowers highly when they didn't necessarily need to, and they absolutely fed him. They've got the people behind the scenes there who understand that you want to give a rookie work when they're truly special. And against the Patriots, who are a shaky defense, I'm willing to roll the dice and just hope that they can be creative enough with him from the get-go.
Yeah, I think for me, Ashton Jeanty is that good of a prospect that he deserves his place in this tier. I think that I'm excited to see what Chip Kelly does. Yes, he got a lot of hate for how he did in San Francisco and the end in Philadelphia, but this guy is one of the best run scheme coordinators we've ever seen in the NFL. And you give him a player like Jeanty, I'm super excited about what he can create and what this offense could be. So, yeah, wheels up for Ashton Jeanty this week. Moving across to our A tier. Now, these are some really interesting players, highly drafted, but perhaps that slight step down in the receiving game. So we have got Jonathan Taylor, Derrick Henry, Devon Achane, Chase Brown, and Bucky Irving. We'll start with Devon Achane. Been managing a calf injury over the past few weeks. Feels like he's healthy and going to play. Have you got any concerns about him seeing a slightly reduced workload?
Yeah, well, he was listed as limited on Wednesday's injury report, which isn't the end of the world, but I would expect that after a limited, he's probably going to end up playing. We don't need to be like firing up Ollie Gordon as like an RB1 or anything extreme like that. And it's just hard to get away from the numbers last year. Like Achan led all running backs with 78 catches. He also had the most receiving yards. He also tied for the most receiving touchdowns. And he had 70% of the carries inside the 5-yard line. His only downside was just not getting more touches. And the only problems were really when Tua wasn't playing, because he averaged 14 fewer points in the games without Tua. So seeing what his role is going to be very interesting. I don't think that we particularly need to worry about Indy as a run defense. I think that, you know, one of these teams that we want to start against, because we mentioned this in the tight ends video, but the Colts, they like to play fast. So if Miami gets into a high-paced game, then there could be plenty of points in this one. And I think that if you've got Devon Achane and you drafted him inside the top 15 picks, then you need to be ready to start him in week 1.
Absolutely. Devon Achane in games over the last 2 years with Tua under center, averaging 19.9 fantasy points a game. In games without Tua, 8.6. Tua's healthy, Achane's healthy. Let's fire him up and get him started everywhere. The other player, I guess that we're probably a little bit differing on, Bucky Irving. You've got him up as your RB8. I'm a little bit lower on RB13. I'm just a bit concerned. The loss of Liam Cohen, Tristan Wirfs not playing. I'm concerned what that could mean for this Bucs offense, and particularly Bucky Irving. You seem a little bit more confident on him. Are you not concerned about those losses?
Well, I think part of that can be offset by the fact that they're playing an Atlanta defense that doesn't look particularly strong. They ranked 20th against the running DVOA last year. Bucky was one of the most efficient running backs from week 6 onwards. Like, he looked fantastic. He had 15 plus points in 9 of his last 12 games. He had the most yards after contact per attempt last season. So even if this line isn't as strong as it was with Liam, with Tristan Wirfs out there, definitely not with Liam Cohen out there, then I think that they're still going to be able to scheme him. He's still going to be able to get those hard-earned yards after contact. And I mean, the Bucs offensive line, it was an internal promotion, wasn't it? Which always makes me feel a little bit better about things.
Yeah, and I guess perhaps we saw last year the Bucs lost their offensive coordinator Liam Cohen, and it took a step forward. So maybe we could see it again. But I'm a big Liam Cohen believer, and I've got some concerns there. Moving across to our B tier though, Kyren Williams, Josh Jacobs, James Conner, Alvin Kamara, and Tony Pollard. Now, Tajay Spears out on IR. Do you feel that Tony Pollard, we need to be getting him in lineups and DFS lineups as much as possible to make the most, because there is certainly not anyone else in this backfield that's going to be seeing touches?
Yeah, and I mean, let's just be clear about it. Tony Pollard was by far a better running back than Tajay Spears last year, and the big struggle for him was the fact that the Titans, they ranked 27th in points scored per game last year and 23rd in plays per game. They couldn't stay on the field because Will Levis was so bad. But Tony Pollard, when it came to him and Spears, he outcarried Spears 4.3 yards per carry to 3.7. He also had a 5.4% big run rate compared to 2.3% for Tajay Spears. And in total, he ended up with over 700 more yards than Spears. So there was nothing that Spears was doing better than Pollard. But this game possibly isn't the easiest of situations. And this is the big question mark here for me. And Pollard, I would like to be ranking in this tier with more confidence, but the Broncos, they were a top 2 run defense in DVOA last year. They allowed the 4th fewest running back fantasy points in the receiving game. So there wasn't an easy way to get at the Broncos. And that's why Pollard ends up here, and why I feel a little iffy about him. Maybe he could have ended up in the tier below this. And just going into some of the other question marks, I mean, Kyren Williams last year played 888 snaps. That was the most by any running back in the league. And we're going to see more Blake Corum. We're going to see Arquez Hunter. Texans run defense ranked number 1 last year. They only allowed 5 top 12 running back games. Josh Jacobs, massively volume reliant last year. The Packers passed the ball at the 3rd lowest rate last year, and Jacobs saw 20 touches per game after the week 10 bye. Never saw fewer than 17 in a game. Like, he was absolutely fed. What if we see less efficiency? What if we see the Packers go more pass heavy? James Conner's here because by his own words, Trey Benson's going to get the ball more this year. But I do like James Conner a lot. The Saints, they ranked with the 3rd worst run defense last year. So I think that he has a chance to really show why he's in this tier, because I think a lot of people possibly would have been putting him in the tier below this one. And then Alvin Kamara. I mean, Alvin Kamara is just a question mark for me every year, and I struggle with him. This is year 9 for Kamara. Still never hit 1,000 yards rushing in a season. But the one reason why people should be plugging him in is in the 4 games he played with Spencer Rattler last year, he had 7.7 targets per game.
It's pretty good. I would say as well on the James Conner point, they're playing the Saints. I'm expecting the Saints to be absolutely woeful this year. I think Arizona's going to get up early, try and kill the ball, and that's going to mean James Conner carries, which hopefully should lead to garbage time at fantasy points, but in a good way. We're going to move to an absolutely monster tier here now. Now, for me, Tom, those first 3 tiers, those are the guys I'm comfortable starting with. If I've got them as my RB1 and RB2, I'm happy. This tier, I feel like I'm holding my nose a little bit. Let's dive in, though. We've got Omarion Hampton, Kenneth Walker, Aaron Jones, Chuba Hubbard, James Cook, DeAndre Swift, Treveyon Henderson, Isaiah Pacheco, David Montgomery, Tyron Tracy, Breece Hall. Now, that is a monster tier. There's a lot of players to start talking through there. Is there any way you particularly want to start?
Well, let's start at the top of the tier with Omarion Hampton, because we've spent so much time talking about him this offseason. We had Matthew Berry on the channel who talked about him as his ride or die selection, and that was even before the Najee Harris eye injury weirdness. Now, Najee Harris looks like he's going to play on Friday night in Brazil, which great. It's good. It's a good thing that Najee Harris is well enough that he can actually play, because on a just pure human level. But I'm not worried about it. Like, ever since Omarion Hampton landed with the Chargers, we knew, okay, well, Najee Harris is a fine running back, but he's not somebody who could stop somebody of Omarion Hampton's talent being on the field, particularly when Najee Harris hasn't practiced all summer. Where you should be slightly concerned is about the fact that this game is happening in Brazil, which does add a little bit of a different twist to it. What's the field conditions like? What's the temperature? All these kind of little bits. The Chiefs were a top 7 run defense last year. They allowed the fewest running back fantasy points. You go back to how the Chargers played against them last year, and in week 4 last year, J.K. Dobbins had 2.3 yards per carry against this Chiefs team. So it's not like the Greg Roman scheme is suddenly going to unlock the Chiefs. So, yeah, I mean, Omarion Hampton is a big one for me. Kenneth Walker, what's his fitness like? Otherwise, fine. The Niners, you could run on them last year. They ranked 19th in run defense DVOA. Aaron Jones, the big question mark will be how much is Jordan Mason playing, who we've got further down in these tiers. If he gets the goal line work, if he's getting a lot of the work between the 20s and Aaron Jones is reliant on the receiving game, then it's going to be a very different year for him. But the Bears, their defense kind of picked up in recent years. And then I guess we could probably have to talk about James Cook. I think you're a lot more confident in James Cook than I am. I know you've got him 15th in your rankings, whereas I've got him 25th in mine.
Yeah, absolutely. I think a lot's been made of James Cook, and I feel like people are dinging him because he had the contract holdout. But he's been back practicing for over a month now.
Yeah.
Like, I think he's going to be there. You look at I go and look at the Vegas odds, and you see anytime touchdown is even. Like, yes, he's due some touchdown regression from last year, but he's still got a lot of touchdown equity in this offense. Maybe it's just because they're playing Baltimore, Tom, and you're just being a bit of a homer. But I think that James Cook is still a big part of this offense. There's not any superstar wide receiver that the ball's going to get fed to, and I think James Cook's still going to be a big part of this offense.
Well, the Ravens were a top 5 run defense last year, allowed the 8th fewest fantasy points to the position. Now, obviously, there's levels to it. Like, the Ravens did give up a decent amount of rushing production to the Bills in the playoffs. I think it was 147 yards and 3 touchdowns that game. But I'm not expecting James Cook to be as good as he was last year. Last year, he ran really pure, and I think that Ray Davis played really well, and I'm expecting him to mix in a bit more. And Cook, when you remove the touchdowns and the points for that game, now, obviously, points were good. We're not trying to just downplay the fact that he scored points. I would like running backs who score points. But he ranked 24th in scrimmage yardage among running backs, whereas in touchdowns, he was right at the joint top. So it's a big disparity. And I just find it a little bit of a struggle to automatically rank him quite as high this year.
Yeah, absolutely. One player that I also want to touch on, Tom, Treveyon Henderson. It feels like the hype is out of control in the offseason after that 100-yard kickoff return for a touchdown. Do you think that we need to call the Jets a little bit and we'll see him eased in, or do you think he's going to get a significant workload from week one?
I think that he's going to see enough. I think that, it would be no surprise if Ramondre Stevenson is out there for the first snaps and classified as the starter. But Ramondre Stevenson had fumbling issues last year. Ramondre Stevenson wasn't particularly great last year, which was a shame because we both liked him last year. And I think that Treveyon Henderson just has so much juice. It's going to be very hard to keep him off the field on a team that's lacking playmakers. Now, the Raiders defense, they were a pretty decent unit last year. At times, they weren't necessarily somebody who you wanted to fire up pass catching running backs against because they allowed the 8th fewest fantasy points in that area. Middle of the pack in terms of fantasy points allowed to running back position overall. So, yeah, I don't mind it at all. I mean, look, I drafted Treveyon Henderson in the 3rd round of my home league, and I'll be starting him this week.
No, absolutely. We're going to move into our D tier, though. Kicking off with Jaylen Warren. He's your sleeper of the week, Tom. What is it about Jaylen Warren that's got you ranked at your running back 26 overall?
Yeah, so this one comes back to he should start the season strong, and he does what Aaron Rodgers wants, and that's pass protect well and be willing to catch the ball. And that's what Aaron Rodgers wants because he doesn't want to throw the ball in the dirt. He doesn't want to throw the ball in harm's way against this Jets defense, which Aaron Rodgers is going to want to keep the ball moving, and maybe he'll pick and choose his moments where he can really go for big plays. But Jaylen Warren can pass protect. Jaylen Warren knows the scheme. By all accounts, Jaylen Warren has just been the more reliable, consistent running back in camp compared to Caleb Johnson, which shouldn't be surprising considering Caleb Johnson is a rookie. But I feel like Jaylen Warren is going to be somebody that, whilst the Jets put pressure on Aaron Rodgers, Jaylen Warren is the outlet, and I wouldn't be starting him in a standard league. I don't think we've seen enough from him as a rusher where you could trust him, but in PPR and even half PPR, I like him a lot.
Yeah, he's absolutely potentially a PPR cheat code. We've also got Austin Eckler, J.K. Dobbins, Travis Etienne, Javonte Williams, R.J. Harvey, and then my sleeper of the week, Jerome Ford. I'm really intrigued as to what this Browns offense could be and how they're going to split up Jerome Ford, Dylan Sampson, with Quinton Judkins still not signed his contract. For me, I think Jerome Ford, we saw him useful on passing downs last year. With Nick Chubb out of the lineup last year, he averaged 10.9 fantasy points. I think the Browns are going to be behind, chasing their game. It means passing snaps. And I think Jerome Ford could be a little sneaky start in some PPR leagues.
Yeah, and this one is kind of fairly easy to get on board with because the Bengals defense just looks so incredibly bad. Last year, they allowed a very healthy, I think it was 20 rushing touchdowns, which ranked in the top 6. They don't look like they've improved anywhere across the board. Now, obviously, they sort of the contract disputes out. Great. But that's more the edge. I think Jerome Ford can get up the middle enough and get to the second level that he can be fine. I think he can have some relevancy in the red zone too.
Yeah, absolutely. And then we're going to move on to our final 2 tiers, our E and F. This is very much handcuff territory, and hopefully you're not starting them. And if you are, I guess you're crossing your fingers potentially for a touchdown. In the E tier, we've got Tank Bigsby, Nick Chubb, Jordan Mason, Ja'Cory Krosky Merritt, Zach Charbonnet, and Rashad White. Now, let's touch briefly on Ja'Cory Krosky Merritt. It feels like he got a lot of hype. Yesterday was talked about the other day as the running back 4 on the Commanders depth chart. Some people were drafting him very early in redraft leagues. Tom, would you be tempted to sneak him in as a start, or do you think you need to see it before you can enter your lineup?
Well, yeah, I mean, the Chris Rodriguez news shouldn't really be that surprising because he's got more experience with the team. Like, we're going up against Giants defensive line that is incredible. I really think that people aren't prepared for how much havoc the Giants are going to cause this year up front. And putting Ja'Cory Krosky Merritt in those situations where he might be called on to block for Jaden Daniels, it just seems like just expecting a little too much from him out of the gate. I think that across the course of the season, sure, But in week one, I'm not looking to start him unless I have to. I mean, some people draft him so highly that they might need to, but I'd be looking at Chris Rodriguez prop lines. I'd be looking at Chris Rodriguez touchdown bets. I'd be looking at those kind of ways to play this game if you need to buy yourself a little bit of insurance away from Big Bill. And then, yeah, the other guy in this tier who I am interested though, it's Jordan Mason, because it seems like the Vikings really, they brought him in with serious intent to use him. And I think that he's somebody that you might be able to start rostering in your starting lineup very soon from the next few weeks.
Yeah, that's definitely one in terms of snap share and touch share that I'm looking forward to reviewing after week one, is what the Vikings are doing in different downs, different situations, because I'm fascinated to see how that splits up. Rounding out with our F tier, Ramondre Stevenson, Caleb Johnson, Dylan Sampson, Braden Allen, Ollie Gordon, Rico Dowdle, and Cam Scatterbo. Tom, hopefully people aren't relying on any of these guys, but if you needed to take a dart throw, you were praying for a touchdown from one of these guys, who would it be?
It's not easy. I mean, the guy in this area who potentially could benefit the most is perhaps Ollie Gordon. If Devon Achane is in a less than 100% condition, then Ollie Gordon is a big bruising guy who potentially could do that. Braylon Allen definitely worth paying attention to this week, because if it is a true timeshare between him and Breece Hall, and if he looks like he's got more juice, then he's going to be a very popular name on waivers next week. So I'd just be looking at some of these guys down towards the bottom: Ollie Gordon, Braylon Allen, Dylan Sampson, Cam Scatterbo, just making sure that those guys aren't on waivers anywhere.
Yeah, 100%. And if you're looking for some quarterback rankings, check out this video where we walk through every single quarterback for this week, where we're ranking them, and the tiers accordingly.